Morning. Welcome to Weirdness Wednesday. You have reached keys to the basement. There they are. Today's story is called The Warlock and the Dip. Yes, dip. Spark County, East Carolina was where all the magic people, witches, warlocks, psychics, mind readers, terrestrials, and extraterrestrials. If you had power, this was where you hung out to be safe. It took a long time to find Spark County, as it was nestled deep in the woods that were so lush and thick and green it looked like spinach. In a valley everyone said was just a dip. No, not bean dip, but spinach dip. Yes, that's it. To get to Spark County you had to stop in the spinach dip. But once you got there, you could shed whatever personality you were using in the fake world and just let it fade away. And you could be who you wanted to be and let your powers flow. There was one rule in Spark County. You under no circumstances were allowed to sing badly. The elders were afraid that any bad singing would cause a mudslide. They would never be able to dig out of it. And they had a whole warning system, but they hoped they would never have to use it. One night, a very weary illustrator found his way to Spark County. Tired from his travels, he needed to stop and rest. Chip was not traveling by foot or car. He was riding a bicycle. And he had been riding all day and wanted food and shelter for the night. His critter Fish, who was a gray tabby cat, was resting comfortably in the saddle-style basket on the bike. The cat was at ease until the bike came to a stop, and then the cat would have anxiety issues and freak out. The only way to calm her was to meow at her, but it had to be in the right pitch or it wouldn't work. So Chip was meowing at his cat, meow, meow, and people walking by just assumed that that was his superpower, to talk to animals, and thought nothing of it. Sally was a lifetime resident of Spark County, and she had two powers. One was that she never aged, and most people weren't there long enough to ever see if she really did or did not age. And the other was she had the power of laughter. It didn't matter who you were, or what your problem was, or who your problem was with. Sally would make you laugh about it and feel better. It was her life mission to make as many people smile as possible, as long as possible. Smiles bring peace on some small level, and other people, they are everything. If you wanted to live in Spark County, you had to be born there. Very few cases would the elders allow people to live there. They wanted to keep their population small enough to control. Sally was a member of the prominent Plasko family, which was what most of the elder board was made of. Sally's family ran the dip. No, not bean dip. Sally liked to wander around town and act like a sidekick most of the time. It made people laugh. But sometimes she got the one person that would get bent out of shape, mostly because they were actually a real sidekick. And the person would get bent out of shape. She would tell the people she had ESPN. Yes, she knew it was actually ESP, but knew the ESPN would make them laugh, and if they didn't laugh at that, she would move on. But if you laughed, she would look at you all over, and then proceed to tell you a story about your life up until the moment that y'all were talking, and would make your life story so outlandish you had no choice but to giggle or laugh about it. This is what passed for fun in Spark County, East Carolina. Sally ran the only hotel in Dip, and since Sally had insomnia all the time, she came in that night and told the night clerk to go home and have a good day off with pay. Chip walked into the Bean Hotel and saw Sally, and he was still weary from his travel. He managed to get through the paperwork for the room, but Sally had to help Chip to his room. Upon entry, Chip asked Sally if he would get his pet Fish from the bike. Sure, I'll get your fish. I hope I don't spill water everywhere, though. And Chip crashed on the bed at the Bean Hotel in the city of Dip in Spark County. No, not Bean Dip. Fish took a liking to Sally, which was odd. This cat didn't like anybody but Chip. So she set Fish on the bed next to Chip and left the room. Then it happened in the early morning hours. A big storm came out of nowhere. Lightning, cracking, thunder rolling long and hard, at times shaking the whole building. It felt like, anyway. And then the rain. Not just little bit of rain, but a lot of rain. Sally was terrified of the lightning. Thunder was okay, but scientifically speaking, you can't have thunder without lightning. That's a long, complicated story, perhaps for another day. Sally enjoyed the rumble and the rain, and finally, about an hour and a half after the storm came, she crashed for about 3 hours. Woke up from a strange dream that the storm would cause significant damage to Spark County. And the last part of her dream was about a bike floating down the walkway of the hotel, and she would run out after it in the storm to save it. As she was still groggy, a big flash of lightning scared the crap out of her. She ducked down behind the counter, shaking. Just then, Chip walked in, and she stood up quick and got dizzy, but grabbed the counter to save herself, hoping nobody had seen it. She didn't want anybody in Spark County to know that she was afraid of lightning. Chip said good morning, and they exchanged pleasantries, and Chip asked if it was possible for him to have the same room for another night, as he wanted to hang out for a while in town. So Sally offered Chip breakfast, ran into the kitchen, made everything she knew how for breakfast. And they ate and talked about the happenings around town. Sally told him where the fun spots were, who to avoid, and the grouches that were around town. I know, right? Grouches in dip? Ew. Suddenly, the storm intensified. The rain got super crazy. Lightning off the charts intensified. And the thunder sounded like it was going to roll through the building at any time. Suddenly, Sally's eyes got wide and big, and she saw the bike go floating down the walkway, just like in her dream. And she figured that because she didn't die in her dream, she wouldn't die in real life either. So she hopped up and ran out to catch it before it hit this flooded street. She pulled it into the lobby, and just as the door closed behind her, there was a huge flash of lightning and a terrible clap of thunder. That lightning struck a huge hole in the path in front of the door she had just entered. Terrified, she jumped right into Chip's arms and was shaking. She begged him not to tell anybody how terrified she was of lightning, and he said he wouldn't. Chip understood about secrets. He was just as afraid of thunder as Sally was of lightning. Chip's cat was more like the service animal for him than a pet. Finally, the storm had let up, and there was debris against the door, but they got out. Chip ran to his room to get Fish, who was freaking out, and Chip meowed meow at Fish to call her down, but it didn't seem to be working, so Sally wanted to try. She let out this horrible sound. Meow! Whoa! And it sounded like a cat was dying. So naturally, Fish thought she was next and settled down. Then after a while, Sally remembered the one golden rule. You were not allowed to sing badly. It was the mudslide early warning system that they heard. Actually, not Sally. But it was too late, and the mud had already started to slide down the hill. And everyone ran around screaming and trying to take cover, find a safe place, anywhere they could. Finally, the mud stopped sliding, and after a while, people came out from their hiding places. Everyone in Spark County had survived. Remember, this is where people with powers come to hang out. So they all at once got to work cleaning up the mud, using their powers and anything else they could. A lot of hands made for quick work. Still having enough time and light in the day, the illustrator decided to set up shop and do some illustrating for the people of Spark County. He opened his hotel room to do it, and made a pretty good amount doing it too. It was late at night, and the last customer had sat down while Chip had his back to the chair. He was getting some more supplies out, and he was a little grumpy, but Sally was the town joy, so she could take the grump right out of him. And he turned around and sat down and realized it was Sally. He kind of chilled out a little, so she pulled out her ESPN on him, and in less than 2 seconds she had Chip smiling and happy again. Feeling like it was okay to ask, "Chip, what is your power?" And he said, "Well, I'm a warlock. I use a wand to illustrate sometimes. It is the only way I can get it all done. And it also helps me to see the inner beauty of the people I am trying to illustrate. But I don't need a wand for this. I've got this." And he pulled out a pencil and he went to work. Sally blushed and looked down because she didn't know what to do about her emotions. Chip asked her to look up so he could draw her, and so she had to look up at him. And then he asked her what her eye color was. She had to look at him in the eye for him to determine that. And so night was upon them again, and Chip was already in his room, had closed up shop. Sally went to her room, and again they were both weary from the long day. Sally laid down and finally fell asleep. And her dreams again were weird and made her sad because she saw Chip and Fish leaving the next day. And all the fun and the mystery and excitement that Sally had just experienced would be gone again, and she would be alone. Fish and Chip. That sounds good. So she got up and went to the kitchen. She had slept her full 3 hours anyway. And on the way, she ran into Chip, who was out in the hallway beating up a vending machine because it didn't give him the food he wanted. She giggled at him and said, "Come on with me to the kitchen. I'm sure I can conjure up something edible." And so they went, and Sally made a spread that was way bigger than either one of them could eat. So they ate what they could and put the rest away for the next day. Sally would go out and feed the locals in need, the leftovers. When Sally returned to the hotel, she expected for Chip and Fish to be gone. But alas, they weren't. Chip asked her if he could have a room at the hotel indefinitely. And it was okay because Chip and Fish weren't living there. But after a long time, they grew together. But Sally warned Chip that she never aged, and being a warlock, neither did he. And then he added that he had put a spell on the cat, so she would never die either. A trio meant to be forever. Never a dull moment in Spinach, part of East Carolina, Spark County, town of Dip. No, not Bean Dip. They all lived laughing ever after. I hope you enjoyed Weirdness Wednesday. Once again, this is Keys to the Basement. I hope you have a great and safe rest of the week. Happy Hump Day.